Today I have with us a good friend of mine, Lane Kramer, here in Dallas, Texas, and he is the president of a company called the CEO Institute that I have personally been involved in and participated in for 6.5 years. And Lane, you got something you'd like to add to that?
Well, it's just been a joy to work with several hundred business owners and CEOs over the last 27 years in all different kinds of businesses and stages of growth and different stages of faith, and it's been a pleasure to serve.
So, Lane, how did you get started in this business after all?
Well, before initiating the CEO Institute, I ran a publishing business for a few years and published a capital source guide called the Money Source book. Published that for 3 years, and then the circulation sort of peaked out and the revenues peaked out, and realized I didn't want to expand it into other cities, so I sold it to another publishing company and started thinking about what I wanted to do next in the business world and what I enjoyed doing. So I called up my good friend Jerry White at the Cruth Institute of Owner Managed Business at SMU and proposed putting on a one-day CEO conference here in Dallas. And lo and behold, we got about 108 CEOs to attend that one-day event, very successful event. And sat in my office the next day, patted myself on the back, and realized, Lane, that was a great event, but that's not a business. I wonder if there is a business that could be brought out of the ground to follow up this one-day seminar. So I sent out marketing surveys to 108 CEOs and got about 60 or 65 of them back in the mail, indicating things that they thought that the CEO Institute could do for them on a go-forward basis. And based on their feedback, I realized that, I think there is a business here that people will pay for, value, pay for value. So the CEO Institute was born in 1991, and 27 years later, here we are still going strong.
Lane, when you look back over your business career, do you mind sharing with us one accomplishment that you are most proud of?
Well, I would say, 2 years ago was our 25th anniversary, business anniversary that we celebrated here in Dallas. And so I invited our former members, our current members, and prospective members over to a breakfast at Lowry's Prime Rib, and did a look back over the way that the CEO Institute had impacted people's lives and businesses over the last 25 years, and got some testimonies of people that stood up to talk about how the Institute had really made a difference in their life. And I realized then what, kind of on a cumulative basis, the real lasting impact that the CEO Institute and myself and the other members had on other members over the years. And story after story came from the audience about what a big difference we had made in their lives. So that was just, it was like a proud papa that day to say, wow, something really good is happening here, has happened, will continue to happen. And so we have stood the test of time, and I'm really proud of that.
I had an opportunity to attend that. And you had, I don't know if you remember, but you asked me to get up and give a few comments.
Yes.
And I had, boy, I tell you what, just those 6.5 years I was involved, it really had a big impact on our company. And I tell you, something that I really enjoyed was that, like you mentioned there, is having an impact on the other CEOs that were around the table. And because you had multiple groups, because I had to travel so much in our business, that I was able to make up, you made that possible for me to make up at the other groups. And I really enjoyed getting to know other CEOs and hearing out, some of the successes and failures that they were struggling with, I saw a tremendous growth in our company while we were involved in the CEO Institute. One of the things to be interesting is there something that maybe you failed at that you might have learned something from it?
Well, prior to the time I started the CEO Institute in the publishing business, I worked for a couple of banks in downtown Dallas, and in about 1986 or 87, in that time frame, Texas was undergoing an oil and real estate bust. So on one fateful Friday afternoon, there were about 35 employees of First City Bank that were given a pink slip, and I was one of the employees that was given the opportunity to get off the bus. And at first I was really kind of shocked and surprised and appalled and mad. And it was only with the passage of time did I realize that God was kind of moving me from one railroad track as a banker to a different railroad track as an entrepreneur. And so at the time it was a really painful experience, but as I look back, it was all part of a bigger plan to kind of propel me forward on a different career, one that I've found a lot of success and significance in pursuing over the last 25 years. So failure is never final, and sometimes the things that are the hardest to bear at the moment turn out to be have a silver lining to them. So.
Well, yeah, that's absolutely true. I've seen that. Who likes to go through failure in things? And I've had some things in our business that many years ago we have invested about $4 million back in the 90s of a new division, and it didn't take off. It was the right idea, just the wrong timing. That I finally learned about that, and it was painful. Mm-hmm. It was painful. And but it's the things that we learn from that is where do we go from here? And there has a lot to do with how we deal with failure. And it sounds like it really kind of comes down to determination that we're not going to let this set the stage of the rest of our life. And
right.
So thank you for sharing that. What one person or maybe a particular defining moment in your life that's inspired you to become a man of having an extraordinary life?
Well, if I had to point to one person, it would probably be a gentleman named Buck Jacobs, who was the founder of the C12 Group, based in Tampa, Florida at the time. And I was fortunate enough to go to a conference of Christian businessmen in Atlanta, Georgia, where Buck was a keynote speaker. And he sort of offered up to the audience the whole notion that faith and business could go together hand in hand, and that they weren't separate and distinct from each other, but that you could live out your faith in the marketplace if you were focused on doing that. And that really rhymed with me. It spoke to my inner person. And I realized, although the CEO Institute, before I heard Buck speak, was mostly, I would call a secular business organization, largely focused on helping people solve business problems and realize their opportunities, Buck kind of put in front of me the idea that I could help people integrate biblical principles in the way they led and managed their business. So I went back to Dallas and kind of prayed about it, thought about it, and realized that I think God wanted me to take the CEO Institute in a more faith-oriented direction, and that the catalyst for doing that, I believe, was hearing Buck Jacobs talk in Atlanta that day.
Lane, sorry to cut you off, Bobby. Lane, I wanted to ask a little bit more about the CEO Institute specifically. I know you said you had a background in banking, and I wanted to dig into moving from being a cog in the big wheel, to being the big wheel, like moving from being a small part of something big to being a big part of something bigger.
Yeah.
And really, I guess my first kind of question is marketing to CEOs. CEOs typically seem like they seem like they'd be hard to get a hold of, right? You'd have to go through secretaries or front desk people. They've got meetings, they've got schedules, and they've got vacations. How are you gonna manage to nail these people down and talk to them? And you kind of right off the bat managed to get a lot of them to come to this one-day seminar you had, and you kind of built a business out of that. What's the trick? Is it being humble and shaking their hand? Is it going through the right channels and talking to who you got to talk to? I mean, how do you market to CEOs?
Well, the marketing is through a variety of different means. Probably the most successful way that we find new members today is through referral from somebody that's well familiar with me or the CEO Institute. But in terms of how do you attract a CEO to be your customer or a client, I think they have to realize that you as the vendor or as the professional, you are really for them, and that you're for their personal and professional success, and that you're really committed wholeheartedly to helping them achieve what they're trying to achieve in their business and their personal life. So they can sense your motive for whether you're really there to help them or you have some hidden agenda or you're trying to manipulate them for some, unseen purpose. So the moment of truth, when I get in front of a CEO face to face, they have to, I believe, they make a very quick determination whether or not I'm somebody there that's truly there to help them or not.
Right. I think to be a CEO, you got to have a lot of things. I think you got to be honest. You got to have grit. You got to be wise beyond your years. And you got to be able to look at a situation and go, you know what, this is for me or it isn't. And clearly you're offering something at the CEO Institute that people like, that works. And I want to ask about that. What is it exactly? What do you think brings people to you? What is it about the CEO Institute that CEO goes, you know what, I need this. This is important.
You mean you want me to tell you my secret sauce?
The secret formula. No, you don't have to dish it. It's fine.
Is this on World Radio?
We can save that for after the show, I guess.
Well,
I don't know. What do you think?
I'll tell you a few things.
Please.
What we do, we have 3 squads of executives called the Faith and Business Forums that meet a half day a month, and it's a fusion of business and spiritual principles all rolled up into one business meeting. And there's just a couple elements of the meeting. There's an article I write or bring to the table that helps remind the CEOs or shows them how they can integrate faith in their workplace in a very practical way. So it stimulates their mind along those lines. There's about a 30-minute period of time. We call it praises and petitions, where people can be honest with each other and share with one another things that are going on in their lives or their businesses that they need prayer for, or things that they're excited about, and we celebrate those victories with them together. So it breeds a very high level of trust and intimacy and openness that they don't normally find in other business organizations. So the relationships they have between each other go well beyond just being business advisors to one another. So they're life advisors, they're life coaches, they're confidants, they're friends, and there's this basket of smart, very smart, high integrity, street smart CEOs that are running what I call Main Street businesses that are in the trenches every day with their hands on the steering wheel, and they have a lot of practical wisdom and counsel to offer each other that they may not have access to either within their company or even maybe on their own board of directors.
So you tapped into honesty, vulnerability. It gives them the ability to step back and say, okay, I can be myself and I can be open here.
Exactly.
That's clever. That's not an angle I would have thought of, and I think that's really something. There's something there.
Zach, my own experience being involved in the CEO Institute is exactly what Lane described.
Oh, yeah?
And Lane facilitates very well of encouraging the conversation across the table with a group of CEOs in a very secure, everything's kept confidential, and CEOs feel very comfortable to lay out their dirty laundry.
Yeah.
And to ask for advice. That they don't have anyone back back at the office that they can sit down and talk about with, that can have the mindset of a CEO and all the matters that CEOs are faced with.
So, Bobby, you went through the CEO Institute.
Exactly.
Okay, so how'd that happen? How'd you two get tangled up? Was it a referral? I mean, did you?
Well, there's another organization called Marketplace Chaplains here. They had a luncheon, and they had another speaker, but they asked Lane to make some comments. This Lane, whenever you were, I don't think you had actually started yet, but you were just announcing you were starting. And that was my first introduction to Lane. I didn't know who Lane was before then. So I followed up with Lane, because I had been for years looking for a group of CEOs that I could interact with to talk about everyday issues that I was dealing with that I couldn't talk with people in our business on.
Right. So, Lane, tell me about how you kind of stay on top of all this. Like I said, you came from a position, you were a small part of something big. You were a small fish in a big pond. Now you seem to be a big fish in a big pond. What's your mindset like? What's your, what do you say when you get up in the morning? How do you come to work ready to take on the day and deal with people who are clearly dealing with big problems already?
Yeah. Well, I'm a Christian, and so my attitude when I get up in the morning is I ask God to use me for His purposes, to be a positive influence in the lives of the people that He's put in the CEO Institute. So I go to work with a strong purpose every day. It's even stronger than just having a purpose. It's having a calling. So I'm called to serve these people, to help them grow their companies, help them to develop as professionals, as people, as business owners, and to help them get their companies where God wants them to go. So I guess it's is it the Blues Brothers? What was the John Belushi?
We're on a mission from God.
Well, it sounds really corny, but I'm on a mission from God.
I get behind it.
And so that really gives me a strong sense of purpose when I wake up. I don't have a job anymore, but I do have a calling. I have a strong calling to serve these people and to make a big difference in their lives and their businesses. And so that motivates me to show up for work every morning. Even if I were not to get a paycheck, I'd still be there.
Wow. And that's very altruistic of you. Yeah, I like to say the same about myself. I like to say that I would show up even if I didn't make a paycheck. I like to think that.
Lane, earlier you mentioned about Buck Jacobs, and I agree with you. I remember you introduced me to Buck Jacobs, and I still admire the things that he did and how he got you going in the direction, in the mindset that of where you are today.
Right.
And he was a great person of influence on a lot of people, and I'm with you on that. I think I'm grateful that you introduced me to Buck Jacobs. Lane, one of the things maybe that you might want to mention about, before you got into the banking, if I remember correctly, you actually are CPA. Is that correct?
Well, I don't currently hold a CPA license, but I passed the CPA exam coming out of the University of Illinois, where I was an accountancy major.
Yeah.
So it was a great background to understand the language of business.
Yeah. Well, Lane, I really think you have lived an extraordinary life. And how would you might define an extraordinary life?
Well, I would say an extraordinary life for any of us is when we commit ourselves to God's purposes for our lives, and we kind of are willing to let God lead us into the work that He has planned for us to do. And in my case, as I say, over the last 27 years, I've been able to positively impact the lives of really several hundred business executives during that time. So an extraordinary life to me is when you abandon yourself to God and his purposes, and you let him live through you, and you're going to see powerful results in the people that you serve. And so to me, life is all about serving others, serving God, and if you do that well, you're gonna get a lot of joy and satisfaction out of that, and chances are you'll earn a good living in the process.
Yes, I'm in agreement with you there. And what might be one thing that you would like to change in your life to make your life even more extraordinary? Would you mind? I know you have something personal you would like to share with us. So,
yeah. Well, this is a little hard to talk about, but 11 months ago I was diagnosed with pancreatic and liver cancer. And at the time, my doctor, Dr. Begg, I said, well, Doc, how long do I have to live? And he said, well, I can't tell you for sure, but based on the bell curve, probably about 11 and a half months. And so, wow, that was a real shock to the system that maybe I wasn't going to live to be an old geezer after all. And so for the first time in my life, I had to consider my own mortality. And, was I really, on target with my life and making every day really count, again, not knowing how many days I had left. So I've learned a lot of life and spiritual lessons over the last almost 11 months, and I'm still here, Dr. Begg, that I've used to share those lessons with other people, both in business and in different churches around the community. But I've really impacted their lives through my message that I've been speaking in public about. But the one thing that would, I think, even make my testimony more extraordinary and more powerful is if God were to grant me a total healing and remission from the cancer, because I do have an aggressive form of cancer, and not many people live very long after they're diagnosed with the cancer. So I think if God were to grant me the healing that I'm asking for, I would have even a more powerful message to go tell people about the faithfulness and the goodness of God.
Yes, I agree with you. And Lane, thank you for sharing that. I know that's been a challenge for you and your family.
Yep.
And, I know that your daughter's going to be getting married. Is it in May? Is that correct?
Gets her MD in June and May, and her MRS in June.
Yeah. So, I know that you're looking forward to that time, and so thank you for sharing that. What what are a daily discipline that you have that you would like to share with our listening audience that's contributed to your extraordinary life?
Right. Well, the single thing that's made the most difference in my life, and again, I'll attribute this habit that I've developed to Buck Jacobs, who probably in his talk referred to something called quiet time. For me, I've kind of rebranded it. I call it Java with Jesus. And so every morning at 5:30, I get up and make the world's best cup of coffee at my house, a pot of coffee. So I go curl up in my study in my chair, and I read scripture, devotionals. I have prayer time, praying for other people, just fellowshipping with God, and really asking God to just seep into my character, my heart, my mind, and my soul, and power up for the day, fuel up. I often tell God, I'm not leaving the house without you. If you're not coming to work with me, I'm not going. So either you come with me or I'm staying home today. So I think he says, okay, well, I want you to go to work, so I'm going to go with you. And so, when I'm out there in the marketplace, when I'm in my office, I'm not by myself. I'm, powered by God, you might say. And he gives me wisdom, he gives me direction, he provides the resources, the members to work with, And so, I'm 5'8" on a good day. I'm not a tall guy, but I think I'm packed with power. And the power comes from the tune-up, the fill-up, the changing of the spiritual oil every morning that happens from about 5:30 to 6:30.
That and the world's best cup of coffee, which sipping on my decaf Kroger brand over here, I gotta know what goes into Lane Kramer's best cup of coffee? What is that?
Well, I have a world-class a world-class coffee maker from the Netherlands. I have a world-class Italian coffee bean grinder.
Oh, wow.
And I can't tell you where I buy my coffee beans because it's a trade secret.
That's a secret sauce kind of thing. He's got a handful of those.
It's secret sauce.
Next time you're on the show, we got to talk about Lane Kramer's secret sauce.
It's
Anyway,
it's
sorry.
proprietary.
Boy, Lane, that's a piece I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
I've even been at your house.
Java with Jesus.
Yeah. Well, that quiet time's always played an important role in my life. And I say this not to, for people to pat me on the back or, congratulate me or anything, but I started 30 years ago, over 30 years ago, and I've never missed a day in the mornings, except one time when I was traveling. And I agree with you that it's like I already had my quiet time this morning. I'm an early riser. I got up at 4:30 this morning, and I had to start getting up earlier just so I could have that time.
Right.
Lane, have you recently read or listened to that has a big impact on your thinking that you could recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, the current book that I'm reading is called Everybody Matters by Bob Chapman, who is the CEO of Barry Wehmiller Companies up in St. Louis. And the book is all about how Bob, as well as his leadership team, deals with their employees to encourage them, build them up, recognize them, empower them, provide professional development efforts, and whether it's the janitor, the receptionist, the vice president, the thesis is that literally every link in the business chain is critical to the performance and the well-being of the business. So, the work that the receptionist does is just as important as what one of the vice presidents does, because heck, the receptionist is the welcoming voice to all the calls coming into the company during the day. So he or she is the face of the business, and so that impression they create sets the tone for somebody's interaction with the company going forward. So everybody's job is very significant. Every person is valuable in God's eyes, and so it's a great book. I'm reminded, Bobby, an expression, and I don't know if it was John Maxwell that said leaders are readers. And so I always try to have a book going. I'll be on the airplane tomorrow, and so on the way to Miami, I'll be, wolfing down a few more chapters of Everybody Matters. But that's my current read. And, I've got probably 300 books in my library that I think are just superb on all different business topics and faith at work books, and they're my business jewels, you might say. Those books are.
Yes, I have found I've got a bookshelf full of books, and I agree with you that I probably spend 2 to 3 hours a day just reading, and it has a big impact on me, and so I value that as well. Lane, I know you have a good time, and what do you do for fun? You mind sharing that?
Yeah, well, what I do for fun is my favorite hobby is to play golf. So I most Saturday mornings I get up and have a group of golfers over at Royal Oaks Country Club that I'll go out and hit the little white ball around a beautiful golf course and have great fellowship and the challenge of playing a good game of golf. And so that's probably number one. And then number two is probably just, frequent get-togethers with family and friends over meals or going to the movies, and just cultivating relationships with people I love and want to get to know better, and just having great fellowship, building relationships with people that matter to me, and hopefully I matter to them. And those two things. And then, vacationing. Tomorrow we'll be on the plane to Miami for a good friend's son's getting married. So basically 3 days to celebrate and fellowship and socialize, and of course play around a golf on Friday. So just when the opportunities to travel come along, seize those and go on those trips and make those memories.
Yeah. I know talking with you, earlier that is that you're doing everything possible in your ability to make every moment count.
Right.
And with that, what advice would you like to, one piece of advice that you'd like to leave our listening audience with?
Well, presuming that most of the listeners to this podcast are in the business world, the one thing I would just say is if you dedicate your career, your job, your business to the Lord, He will just use you in remarkable ways to impact the lives of other people as well as your business. And you will leave a large mark on this world, an enduring mark, and leave a powerful legacy even after the time when you're not walking on this earth any longer. So if you just give God the reins to your life, you ask Him to direct your business, ask Him to direct your career, work in and through you on a daily basis, then you're going to just have a full and enriched and an abundant and highly satisfying life.
Well, I'm definitely agree with you there. Is that as just to wrap everything up, is where can the audience learn more about you, your business, and how can they contact you?
Yeah, well, we're a Dallas-based company here in North Texas, and so all of our clients, or members as we call them, hail from Dallas and the surrounding suburbs, and so that's where we operate and impact people and run our activities of the CEO Institute. Our website is www.ceoinst.com. So that's where we can be found on the web, and I think my phone number and email address are on the contact us part of the website. So I'd be pleased to speak with anybody that would like to know more.
Well, Lane, I really appreciate the friendship that we've had for many years.
Mm-hmm.
You've been a great influence on me, and I've been able to have an influence on our people and in our company because of the things just working with you. And so I really very thankful that you were able to be here today, along with my other friend here, with Zach, who's been part of the discussion today. So thank you very much, Lane.
You're welcome. Great to be with you both.
You're listening to RNCN, the digital destination for premium talk radio.